Let me ask you something that might change the way you think about your car forever. You've probably heard someone brag about a Toyota or a Honda or a Nissan that hit 300,000 kilometers and the engine was still running smooth. No major overhaul, no rebuild, just routine stuff. And you probably thought, well, that's just Japanese engineering. That's just how those cars are built. But here's what nobody's telling you. That same engine, in the hands of a different owner with different habits, could have been dead at 80,000. The engineering didn't save that car. Something else did. And once you understand what that something else actually is, you'll never look at car maintenance the same way again. Most people in the Western world, when they think about why an engine dies early, immediately go to oil. Cheap oil, wrong viscosity, synthetic versus conventional. That's the conversation. And don't get me wrong, oil matters. But Japanese mechanics, guys who've been working on these engines for 30, 40 years, guys who run taxi fleets and delivery services with 100 vehicles on the road, they'll tell you something different. They'll tell you the oil type is almost never what killed the engine. What killed it was timing. What killed it was delay. What killed it was the driver who said, I'll get it checked next month, and the next month became 6 months, and 6 months became never. That's the real engine killer. Not what you put in the engine, but when you decide to take care of it. There's a concept in Japan called shokunin. It roughly translates to a craftsman's devotion to their work. In Japanese car culture, especially among mechanics and serious owners, operates on something very close to that same principle. The car is not just a machine you operate, it's a system you maintain. And maintaining a system means you don't wait for it to show you a problem. You go looking for problems before they find you. That philosophy is baked into how Japanese owners treat their vehicles, and it explains almost entirely why those engines last so long. Let's walk through what this actually looks like in practice, because it's not complicated. It's just consistent. In Japan, vehicles go through what's called Sheiken, a mandatory vehicle inspection that happens every 2 years and is notoriously thorough. But beyond that legal requirement, a significant portion of Japanese car owners, especially those who own older vehicles or use them for work, bring their cars in for inspections voluntarily, sometimes every 3 to 4 months. Not because something's wrong, because they want to catch something before it becomes wrong. When they check fluid levels, not when the warning light comes on, but on a regular schedule, they notice if something sounds slightly different. They pay attention to how the car feels during acceleration or braking. That attentiveness is not mechanical expertise, it's just habit. And it's a habit that keeps engines alive. Think about what happens inside your engine when you ignore oil change intervals. Oil is not just a lubricant. It's a cleaning agent. It's a coolant. It's a protective film between metal surfaces that are moving at extraordinary speeds with extraordinary heat. Over time, that oil degrades. It picks up contaminants, combustion byproducts, microscopic metal particles. It gets thick. It gets acidic. It stops doing its job properly. Now here's the critical part. This degradation doesn't just make the engine slightly less efficient. It accelerates wear at the molecular level. Every kilometer you drive on overdue oil, you are accelerating the aging of your engine by a factor that no premium oil additive can reverse. A Japanese fleet manager who runs 20 taxis told this to a journalist a few years back, and it stuck with me. He said, I don't change the oil because the manual says to. I change it because I know what oil looks like when it's tired, and I refuse to make my engines work with tired oil. That man's fleet regularly reaches 500,000 kilometers without engine rebuilds. Think about that. Now, let's talk about something that gets almost no attention, warm-up behavior. This is one of the biggest silent killers of modern engines, and it's almost entirely about habits. When you start a cold engine, the oil is thick and sitting in the oil pan. It hasn't yet circulated fully through the engine. The metal components, the pistons, the bearings, the cylinder walls, haven't expanded to their optimal operating tolerances. Everything is slightly tighter, slightly starved for lubrication. In this state, if you immediately rev the engine hard, if you pull out of the driveway and floor it, if you get onto a highway ramp and push the car aggressively, you are putting enormous stress on components that are not ready to handle that stress. Japanese mechanics call this one of the most reliable ways to shorten engine life. It doesn't break the engine immediately, it chips away at it. Every cold start followed by aggressive driving shaves time off the engine's lifespan in a way that compounds over years. What do careful Japanese owners do instead? They start the car and they let it idle. Not for 10 minutes, the way your grandfather told you, but just long enough for the oil pressure to stabilize and the temperature gauge to begin moving. 30 seconds to a minute in most modern engines. Then they drive gently, not crawling, but no hard acceleration, for the first few kilometers. They let the engine warm itself up organically. By the time they reach operating temperature, everything inside is properly lubricated, properly expanded, and ready to work. It sounds small. Over 100,000 kilometers, it is enormous. Smooth driving is another piece of this that deserves a serious conversation. There's a mechanical truth that most drivers don't think about. Aggressive driving doesn't just use more fuel, it causes more wear per kilometer than gentle driving. Every hard acceleration puts strain on the drivetrain, the transmission, the engine mounts, and the engine itself. Every sudden braking event stresses the cooling system, the brake components, and again, the drivetrain. A car that is driven smoothly, gradual acceleration, anticipating stops rather than braking hard at the last moment, maintaining consistent speeds on highways, experiences dramatically less mechanical stress per kilometer. Japanese long-haul truck drivers are trained extensively on this. Fuel economy is one reason, but wear reduction is equally important. An engine that's driven gently has components that last longer because they're not constantly experiencing peak stress loads. This is not a theory, it's physics. Here's a mistake that is incredibly common and incredibly costly that most drivers don't even realize they're making. Ignoring the early warning signs, not the warning lights, those are the late warning signs. I'm talking about the things that happen before the light. A slight vibration that wasn't there before, a very faint ticking sound when the engine is warm, a tiny hesitation when you accelerate from a stop, a smell that comes through the vents for just a moment, a temperature gauge that now seems to sit slightly higher than it used to. These are the engine talking to you. These are early, fixable, inexpensive signals. An experienced mechanic can often diagnose and resolve the issue behind these symptoms for a few $100s or less. Left alone for another 20 or 30,000 kilometers, that same issue can become a head gasket failure, a bearing failure, a warped cylinder head, repairs that run into thousands, or total engine replacement. A retired mechanic in Nagoya, someone who spent over 30 years working at a dealership that serviced everything from small K cars to commercial trucks, once described his philosophy to a Japanese automotive publication, and it's been referenced in car culture circles ever since. He said that in all his decades of work, he almost never saw a well-maintained engine die before its time. He saw poorly maintained engines die early constantly. And the difference, almost without exception, was never the brand of oil or the quality of the air filter. It was whether the owner treated maintenance as something they scheduled or something they reacted to. Scheduled maintenance is cheap. Reactive maintenance, fixing what's already broken, is expensive. That's not a sales pitch for a service center. That's a mathematical reality of how mechanical systems work. Let's talk about timing belts and timing chains, because this is an area where delayed maintenance genuinely destroys engines, and does so suddenly, completely, and expensively. Many engines use a timing belt, a rubber belt that synchronizes the crankshaft and camshaft. This belt has a service interval. It's usually somewhere between 90 and 160,000 kilometers depending on the engine, but your owner's manual will tell you exactly when. If that belt snaps on what's called an interference engine, which is most modern engines, the pistons and valves collide. In milliseconds, your engine is destroyed. Not damaged, destroyed. The repair is almost always more expensive than the car's worth if it's a high-mileage vehicle. And here's the heartbreaking part. The belt almost never gives visible warning before it snaps. You cannot see it failing. You have to replace it on schedule before it fails, because there is no second chance. Japanese mechanics are almost evangelical about timing belt replacement because they've seen too many people learn this lesson the hard way. The cost of the replacement feels significant when nothing is wrong. The cost of the aftermath when you skip it is catastrophic. One fleet operator in Osaka, who managed a delivery van fleet, made it a standing rule that any van that hit the timing belt interval got the service immediately, no exceptions. He said he lost one van to a snapped timing belt early in his career before that rule existed, and that single experience taught him that following the schedule wasn't optional. It was just the cost of operating engines responsibly. There's another habit that I want to highlight because it's so simple and so overlooked. Checking the coolant. The cooling system is what keeps your engine from destroying itself with its own heat. Modern engines operate at temperatures that would be genuinely dangerous without that system functioning perfectly. A small coolant leak, a slightly degraded thermostat, a weak radiator cap, these are things that slowly compromise your cooling efficiency. And when cooling efficiency drops, engine temperatures creep up. Sustained high operating temperatures accelerate wear on everything. Seals, gaskets, bearings, pistons. Japanese owners who take their cars seriously check their coolant level monthly. They check the color of the coolant. Bright and clear means healthy. Brown or rusty means it's degraded and needs flushing. They don't wait for the temperature gauge to spike before they think about cooling. They maintain the system so the system can protect the engine. Transmission fluid is another one. Automatic transmission fluid in particular is something people almost never think about, and yet it does the same thing for your transmission that oil does for your engine. It lubricates, it cools, it cleans. It degrades over time. Neglected transmission fluid leads to rough shifting, increased wear on transmission components, and eventually transmission failure, which is often more expensive to repair than an engine. Japanese mechanics will tell you that many transmissions they've seen fail early weren't poorly made. They were poorly maintained. The fluid hadn't been changed. The interval had been ignored because the transmission felt fine. Transmissions often feel fine right up until they don't. By then, the damage is done. Now let's address something that comes up constantly in online car communities: the debate over expensive oil additives and premium products. You've seen the ads. Pour this in your engine and it'll run smoother, last longer, reduce wear by 80%. And some of these products aren't completely without merit. But here's the truth that Japanese mechanics will give you plainly. No additive, no matter how premium, can compensate for poor maintenance timing. You can pour the most advanced synthetic oil on the market into an engine that's been running 10,000 kilometers past its oil change interval, and you're still far behind where you'd be if you'd used a mid-range conventional oil changed on time, every time. Consistency beats quality every single time when it comes to engine maintenance. The best oil is the oil that's changed when it should be. The best additive is a service center visit that happens on schedule rather than 6 months late. Let me paint a picture for you that brings all of this together. Two drivers buy the same car on the same day. Same model, same engine, same mileage. Driver one treats it like most people do, changes the oil when it's convenient, maybe a bit late sometimes, doesn't think much about the early sounds, skips the occasional service interval, drives pretty aggressively because they enjoy it, never checks fluids between services. Driver two does nothing exotic, uses the same oil, same service center, probably same grade of parts, but they change the oil on time, every time. They drive smoothly and let the engine warm up. They check fluids once a month, takes 5 minutes. When they hear a new sound or feel a new vibration, they get it looked at quickly. They follow the timing belt interval without question. They never push a service date back more than a week or two. At 200,000 kilometers, driver one's car is burning oil, has a developing timing chain rattle, and needs significant engine work. Driver two's car runs like a car with half that mileage. Same car, same engine, different habits. This is not a hypothetical. This is the pattern that mechanics across Japan, and honestly, mechanics anywhere with experience, will confirm over and over. The engineering quality of Japanese cars is real, but it is not magic. It gives you the potential for longevity. Your habits determine whether you realize that potential. There's a phrase that experienced Japanese mechanics sometimes use with customers, and it translates roughly to "the car remembers." What they mean is that an engine doesn't forget the damage that accumulated from years of neglect. Every overdue oil change, every cold start followed by hard acceleration, every ignored warning sign, the engine absorbs all of it. The wear is real. The degradation is real. It accumulates silently and invisibly until one day it becomes very visible and very expensive. On the other side of that, every on-time service, every gentle warm-up, every early catch of a developing problem, the engine absorbs those too. They compound in the other direction. They build the cushion that lets you look at a car with 300,000 kilometers on it and say, "That engine sounds incredible." So what do you do with all of this? You start treating maintenance as a schedule, not a reaction. You look at your owner's manual, seriously, pull it out and read the maintenance schedule, and you follow it. Not approximately, not roughly around there, you follow it. You learn to do a basic fluid check once a month because it takes less time than checking your social media, and it tells you more about your car's health than any dashboard light. You stop doing cold start launches. You drive smoothly, accelerate gradually, anticipate stops. You listen to your car, not paranoidly, but attentively, and when something sounds or feels different, you address it before it becomes a problem. You ask your mechanic not just what's wrong, but what's coming. What should I be watching for? What's due soon? What are you seeing that's worth keeping an eye on? None of this is complicated. None of it requires you to be a mechanic. It just requires consistency. It requires treating your car as a system that needs regular, thoughtful attention rather than a machine you drive until it complains. That's the real secret behind Japanese cars that hit 400,000 and 500,000 kilometers. That's what those mechanics are actually talking about when they explain engine longevity. It's not magic, it's not luck, it's not even primarily the engineering. Though the engineering is genuinely excellent, it's habits, it's consistency. It's the daily and monthly decisions that most people don't think about until the bill arrives. Your engine is telling you right now how it wants to be treated. The question is whether you're listening before it's too late or waiting until it's screaming. The drivers whose engines last forever, they've been listening from day one. And now, so can you.